Should we be concerned that America will turn against Jews we should begin to plan our exit strategy? The person writes it out this way. Dear Rabbi, I've been following your dialogue with a questioner about moving to Israel with fascination. Honestly, your response was hard to understand. Obviously, the Rebbe and previous Rebbe fled Nazi Germany. They weren't opposed escaping. Certainly it would have been prudent for all Jews to leave Europe in the early 1930s, and there were voices advocating to do just that. Can you explain what you mean by saying the Rebbe wasn't in favor of escaping, when he himself escaped and the Jewish world would be much different if all the European Jews had done just that in the 1930s? So let me read another question, which is connected to this. Based on world history, we can look back at the genocides of the Nazis, the Khmer Rouge, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, in Cambodia, and other similar Marxist and Maoist genocides in Eastern Europe and China, and see the commonalities between them and what led up to them. Being that America is slowly headed toward an era of Marxist socialism, and based on world history, we know that once they take over, the way they maintain control and power is through persecution and genocide, what would the Rebbe's advice be to us today? What would the Rebbe advise us to do? Should we sell our properties in the USA and escape now safely and move somewhere else while we still can? In the 1920s and 30s, people in Germany said it can never happen here, and it did happen there. In the USA, we can say it can never happen here, but look at the pro-Hamas students in every college in this country. They hate us and create false justifications to harm us, and they openly admit it. Imagine if these hateful racist students ran for office, and the entire Congress was filled with Ilan Omar's and Rashida Tlaib's, Chaz v'shalom. They would pass laws saying it's open season on us, and they would arrest and imprison police officers and judges that tried to protect us, just like they arrested Trump. So would the Rebbe say to stay here and not worry, or to escape before the pogrom begins? So there's a few points here. First of all, the presumption that it's exactly like it was then, or even similar to what was then, is a presumption. The Rebbe never embraced that approach. He never did. And my opinion is that the Rebbe would not change that position now. Yes, it's not pleasant, but to say that this is the situation of Pikuach Nefesh, when you know clearly and you see clearly that there's danger, and the Rebbe was in France, the Frierdiker Rebbe in Latvia, it was very clear what the matzav was. That was not up for a theory. So to just make a statement because it was that way there, that's why it's like that here, is not correct. It's just not. Now, God forbid, al tiftach peh, that a situation should be like that, that's a whole other discussion. But that's a big assumption, that's a big if. You can make a very strong argument the opposite. The United States is not Germany. The United States its majority is pro-Israel and pro-Jewish, and it will not turn that way, for many reasons. So the discussion would only be if it was a situation like that. So we can't just assume that what you're saying, because in Germany they thought it wouldn't happen, it did happen, that's why every situation, even if we don't think it'll happen, it's going to happen. You can't make that statement and be responsible. The fact is America is good to the Jewish people. Shluchim and Chabad are thriving and doing their work. When the Eibishter wants us to go to Mashiach and come and go to, so obviously we go. But meanwhile, Pi Hashem Yachnu, Pi Hashem Yisu. So that's the first point regarding the question that was asked here. So the escaping, the point I was making was that escaping, we're not talking about escaping Nazi Europe. We're talking about just running away because there may be such a fear is not something I'm ready to say that the Rebbe would say that now. And if someone's ready to say they have to take a chrais to make such a bold statement. So that's the key distinction. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fight these forces and oppose them and sue and litigate the universities and others that are discriminating against Jews, by all means, which frankly couldn't have been done in Germany because the laws were changed. The government became completely anti-Jewish, the government itself. Okay. So it's also an attitude of not creating a panic. I mean, with that attitude, I remember when Crown Heights, for example, was filled with Jews when I grew up as a child. And then there were the changes, the urban changes that happened in all the urban communities. In New York, and Cleveland, and Chicago, and Detroit. And the whites began to run. And crime grew to the point there were really terrible crimes. And there were people who were instigating and creating a panic. They were called blockbusters. They were convincing Jews, you have to run now, or else the prices of your house will go down to nothing. And the Rebbe fought it with all. He could have said, hey, time has come, time to run. That's not an approach. Besides all the halachas involved, as the Rebbe spoke, Pesach, Achos Pesach Tov Chavtes. He spoke about Simon Chavtes. In this regard, you can't just sell your houses and just put other people at risk. Yusoba Poel, 1 second, there was crime. There were people being, God forbid, murdered. It was very dangerous times. That's not a Torah approach, that we think the worst. You think the best, you're prudent, obviously you protect yourself, you're the police, and you do everything possible to defend yourself. Imagine someone would come up and say, now that Hamas and the Arab world is turning on Israel, maybe everyone should leave Israel. It's dangerous. And find a place, hide under a rock. I understand people say there's an army there and so on. So there's an element of betochen, and obviously we build a strong army and we do whatever we takes to protect ourselves. So that's a general attitude that one has to take in life in general. Same thing when it came to South Africa. Very good reason to leave. And many did. 2/3, or I don't know what the numbers, big numbers of Jewish people left. But we know the Rebbe's answer. And that's why Chabad did not leave. Even in the former Soviet Union, where it was mamash asakana. So the Rebbe never forced anyone to do anything, but he encouraged those that listened to him that you're there because you could help other Eden. You're in danger. You know, that's the shlichus. Now, if it's Bekuach Nefesh Mamish, you're talking about in Germany, in a Nazi concentration camp, and in a second they can arrest you in that way, like the Rebbe was when he was in France with the Rebbetzin. Then you're talking about a direct threat. Bekuach Nefesh Decha Kol HaTeira Kula. The former Soviet Union was, in a sense, Bekuach Nefesh, but not to the extent that you knew that you're going to be arrested no matter what. Many, some were, but many were not. So this requires more discussion case by case in every given situation. But obviously we're not talking here about the immediate threat and danger. Because then all the halachas change, because that's like a burning building. You got to get out of burning. You don't say, stay in the burning building because you're going to save someone that may be living there. Yes, if there's someone there living, you try to save them, but you don't stay there for the obvious reasons, the danger involved. Okay. So no, we should not be concerned that America will turn against Jews and plan an exit strategy. If you have a good reason you want to move, and the reason is not compromise any of your shlichus and your avodah, then ask your mashpia, ask your rav, and decide accordingly. Another person wrote, how could the Frierdiker Rebbe visit Israel and then leave from there? And this, the context, was also a follow-up. It was like this. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. In your last MLCA broadcast, that's Meaningful Life, My Life, rather, Chassidus applied, MLCA. I didn't see that before. In your last MLCA broadcast, you explained that the Frierdiker Rebbe traveled to Israel to prostrate himself and pray at the graves of the righteous. Being that in previous broadcasts you taught the idea that one possible reason our Rebbe didn't visit Israel is that if one person comes to Israel, there's a question of whether they should leave. Why did the Frierdiker Rebbe disregard that? So yes, that was one of the reasons that I brought up, which the Rebbe himself has mentioned, but there's also many other reasons. Now, this does not mean, it means there are questions involved. If you go to Israel, can you just leave? So the Rebbe never said definitively, I can't, but he didn't want to go into that area. Of course, you can leave, for example, if you have a tafkid, a Torah mission where you are, you can just justify it. But you're already, what do you have to go there? The Frierdiker Rebbe, firstly, I rely that he knew all these cheshbenis and all the halachas, and he felt that he could leave. So this was not a definitive statement that you can't leave. You ask a rabbi, you'll see many people do visit Israel and they leave, and they're halachic people. Because there are hatadim and there are ways to... Now, do you go with that intention? The Frierdiker Rebbe felt the importance to go to Israel, then he felt the importance to leave there. So I can't really explain all the... I don't know the cheshbenis of the Frierdiker. I don't know the cheshbenis of the Rebbe for that matter. So among all the reasons, that's one of the factors to throw in there. But clearly there's also other factors. So that's the response to that question. Okay.